So I began to do this series of talks about awakening because we have a lot of psychology. We have the psychology of being positive, of being grateful, the deep psychology of resolving our shadow, the practical psychology of resolving our cognitive dissonance. We have a lot of practices. Could be yoga, tai chi, meditation. And we have a lot of doing. And we can get habituated to doing and feel that everything is about a doing. There's an underlying belief in that we are something that we need to do something about. We are something that needs to be fixed or changed or added to. Completed, cleansed, purified. So awakening is about a change of view. It's not about something to do. Awakening is about a change of view, not about something to do. So it might be a natural thought, well, how do I do that? How do I change my view? It's interesting, the eightfold noble path of Buddhism is begins with right understanding or right view. So you can't really change your view. So it's a pickle, it's a conundrum. But what you can do is start to be aware that you have a view, and that view has a history. The view is full of relationships. The view is full of ideas and concepts, beliefs about who you are, about who the world is, about who other people are. I'm better than everybody else. I'm not as good as everybody else. I'm not lovable. There's something wrong with me. I'm incomplete. If I just had this, or if I just did that, or it just looked this way, or it didn't look that way. These are all views. Some of them are big, comprehensive views. Some of them are little views that sway us from moment to moment. Some of them we're very aware of. And many of them are very unconscious. So, one thing that might happen, and I don't know if you can do this, but might happen, is that you might start to get curious about what the hell's really going on here. What am I? What is this world? What am I taking it all to be? How do I live my life? With what do I live my life in accordance to? In other words, do I live in a way that is predicated on all these different views about other people, myself, the world, scarcity, abundance, fears about our physicality, unhappiness about injustice? It might start to happen that you start to get curious. Just like we're curious when the noise goes by outside, there's just a natural wanting to know what that is. So there's a lot of noise inside. It's one of the reasons why we meditate, is that so we can slow down and start to be aware of what's going on. And the meditation that we did today, the meditation of being present with our bodies, with what's here, gives us a sense of what's really here versus what's virtually here. The world that has been created through our life in time. And there's an interesting thing about curiosity. Curiosity is an engagement of the heart. I don't think you can be really curious without your heart being engaged. You can use your head, and of course we do use our heads in curiosity, but the drive of curiosity, the juice of curiosity, not just the clinical dissection of reality, but the fecundity that comes from really wanting to know what's going on. That's coming from your heart. And when your heart starts to be curious, it might start to care about your own experience, about other people's experience. You might see somebody eating a banana and think, oh, that person's hungry. Maybe they didn't have their dinner tonight. Right? And you might have an appreciation in your heart, oh, I'm so glad they brought a banana for themselves. That's so good. Right? The heart starts to warm and fill when we approach our experience with curiosity, which you might be able to do. Even just hearing me talk about it might facilitate that. It's like the wind is filling the sail of a sailboat as I'm pushing in a certain direction. Maybe just talking about curiosity tonight will kind of spark your curiosity a little bit. Bringing your heart to wonder, what is all this? And when I first started doing self-inquiry, there's probably a few of you know Ramana Maharshi, the sage of South India, and he lived in the mid-last century, and he's now widely taken to be one of the great sages of modern times. And his very simple question of who am I, his self-inquiry question of who am I, was really a central practice to me. Really taking that question and framing it and feeling it and using it and penetrating with it. Who am I? And ultimately, what am I? But I noticed one night, I remember I was in my camper in Tahoe, it was 20-something years ago, and I just really got on a tear with it. Who am I? Who am I? You know, I really got goal-orientated with it, right? Really pushing hard with it. And it just kind of like, it just came to this kind of screeching halt, this kind of continents colliding type of halt within my psyche. It was just as much effort as I could possibly muster pushing this question. And the continents started to relax and become a little more molten and soften when I realized that. There wasn't at that moment any curiosity from the heart. There was a drive to know, a drive to fix, a drive to get somewhere, a drive. Whatever that drive was for me. And it was frankly very mind-orientated. Very much coming from my head. It was as if I had a silver-tipped hammer at the point of my head, and I was just trying to hammer down on this question: who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Just as I'm talking about it, I can feel the energy, the hardness of the energy. And I think you'll recognize that there are ways that we pursue life like that. We try to get to the end of something, to fix something, to control something through this hardening of ourselves. This desire to know, this desire to control. So the other metaphor that I thought of for tonight was when we were kids, when I was a kid, we had these little wind-up toys. I don't know if I'm sure there's still wind-up toys on the planet. But, as a kid, you want to wind up the toy and you want it to go and you want to wind it up a little more. And sometimes you wind it up and it just kind of comes to a stop, and that's as far as the winding is going to happen. And sometimes you wind it a little more, and the toy just goes, and it just loses all its spring. And it just kind of, suddenly it's lost all its charge, it's lost all its wind, and it's just kind of there. It's not going to do anything now. So I think there's a place for our intensity, our penetrating, our hardness. It kind of shows us that we're not the boss of everything. We're not in control of it all. So like I'm saying, you can't make yourself curious. You can't okay, now I'm going to be curious. How does that work? But you can catch curiosity. You could catch it tonight, like you could catch a virus. But might be good virus, like curiosity is a little bit better virus to catch. And as you catch the curiosity, it has an effect of starting to shift your view. In a moment of being really open and curious and full of wonder, like little kids, we don't have the agenda. We're not fixing. We're not running from. We're not even necessarily deficient or unwell. In fact, we may not know anything at all. We may get to a point of like that little baby that just doesn't have any concept, doesn't know anything at all. Doesn't even know it doesn't know anything at all. It's just open. An open view. Now, it's not wrong or bad that we have views. We're going to have views. But what happens when the views become really hard, solid, cast iron views about ourselves, about reality, about the world, other people? It becomes incredibly uncomfortable. Cast iron is not a comfortable state. Knowing actually sucks.
It's overrated.
What's that?
It's overrated anyway.
Well, I like the idea of seems like. It seems like this is the way reality is now. You know, seems like the scientific view is a pretty accurate view. So when we know like cast iron, when we know like ice pick, when we know like hammer, when our knowing becomes of violence, that's the kind of knowing I'm talking about. You know, that knowing is painful. And we often don't even know that we're knowing in that way until we kind of come upon it through our curiosity. And that really kind of pushes into another quality of heart which is needed, which is compassion. Because as we become curious, we're going to find out some difficult things about ourselves, about how we view reality. And the first thing that we'll probably come across in that is our judge. And a lot of us have a really harsh judge. that maybe was initially formed to keep us safe, to keep us from harm's way, to keep us compatible with our families or societies. But we want to question and be curious about our allegiance to that judge. Is this really serving me? Is this really true for me now? Is this really my true conscience? Is this my true heart? So, compassion being another quality of our heart, and compassion towards ourselves, compassion towards our own experience. Another word for compassion is often kindness. We may not need to have any view at all sometimes, but sometimes we have more compassionate views than others. Sometimes we have a more compassionate view about how we came to be who we are and the forces that formed this particular self, this particular personality. And you can broaden that compassionate view to see that all of the history of life and everything that's ever happened has come through time to be you as a person sitting in this moment. There's not really another way it could have been. I remember a phrase, I've talked about this before, but a woman who had her daughter murdered, and after years of anger and hatred and frustration and grief and pain, came to slowly over time forgive and befriend her murderer who was on death row. And she formed a foundation. Forgiveness became her vehicle in life. And she had these bumper stickers that she gave out that said, "Forgiveness is giving up all hope for a better past." Forgiveness is giving up all hope for a better past. So my hope right now will be that we can all just be here together with everything. With what's come before, with what's going to come. With our good bits, our bad bits, smart bits, dumb bits, whatever the hell we think of ourselves. That we can just stop here, be here, Be a little bit more open and curious, naked to what's here now. A little bit more awake to what's here now. And we can maybe even trust that being here.